Hi, my name is Anita Graser. I'm working with the QGIS Project Steering Committee and with the Austrian Institute of Technology in Vienna. And I'm teaching the QGIS module here at UNIGIS. That's a really good question. I think I would like to answer that in the context of the QGIS project. We have a really diverse group of people working for the project, and the thing that we need most is enthusiasm. So we are really looking for people who want to change something for the better. And we need a wide range of people with technical and non-technical skills. So there's a lot of people who organize, for example, events and user groups, or who just take care of the infrastructure of the project, who answer emails for support questions. Of course, people who write documentation and who translate the documentation and the user interface. And then naturally, there's also a lot of developers involved, but that does not mean that that's the most important skill in the project. There's lots of people that we need. And what you have to keep in mind if you want to work in an open source project like QGIS is that it's what we call a duocracy. So the people who actually actively contribute to the project, those are the ones which have the power. They actually get things done, and not those who are very vocal but don't actually contribute then actively. What we have seen over the last years is an increasing number of people from all kinds of backgrounds want to use some kind of GIS functionality. And so there is many more people with a diverse background, most of them not really from the field of GIS or geography or cartography. And on the other hand, an increasing amount of spatial data that can be used, and more data which updates very frequently. So I would say it's this expanding user base that we have to deal with on the one side, and the increase in data. So we are going away from these expert systems with very static data towards systems which a lot of people want to use, and very fast changing data streams potentially that you have to learn how to deal with. I think it's extremely important to have those standards because it levels the playing field for everyone, and you can choose the tool which best works for you for a certain job. Because on the other hand, if we didn't have those standards, you would again be back in those times where you spent most of your time converting data and losing attribute names on the way and all those things, which really don't help our productivity. And so I would say the open standards and agreeing on a certain way of doing things is extremely important. Yeah, in 2013, my main motivation was that there was no book out there dedicated solely to QGIS. So if you Googled QGIS or looked for it on Amazon, you couldn't find anything really. So my thought was it would help the project tremendously, make it look more serious if we had a book in stores and in university libraries, which is solely focused on QGIS, which can be used to get started, because there's afterwards, once you have the first feeling of how things work, there are tons of materials out there which you can use for free, watch some YouTube videos, browse the blogs. You will find a lot of detailed information. But the goal of this book was to get people started, the first steps, just to get comfortable, and then they can go on with all the other materials that are out there. I was extremely impressed by the quality of the submissions to the first round of the course. It was really nice to see how structured everyone was working on the different assignments, and also the variety of different answers that were in the more free-form assignments, where people were asked to solve their own geographic questions. So that was really nice to see. Also the level of technical expertise that was shown, for example, in the web mapping examples or the scripting in the end. That was really impressive to see. Yeah, I think the key here was that it's always been a very open-minded community. I just popped in at one of the developer meetings, which happened to be in Vienna, and it was a very warm welcome and people showing you around with the different key players of the project. And so they are very welcoming towards new developers, towards new users. And I think most people feel that there is a place where you can contribute to and where that is welcomed. And also, if you look in the fast development on the programming side, I think it helped enormously that they lowered the bar of entry by providing the opportunity to write Python plugins, for example. That's when you saw that there were a lot of new developers who suddenly started solving their own little problems and contributing back. That helped a lot and made it visible all over the place. Sure. So as I mentioned, there are many different ways how you can contribute. If you would like to develop something, you can just start. If you have a problem that you want solving, you start writing your plugin, for example. And the usual way is just you then upload it to the plugin repository. Everyone can do that. You maybe drop a short note on the developer mailing list. I uploaded this and that. Tell a bit about what it does. And then it should get checked and approved reasonably fast. So that's the first point of entry for most developers. That's mostly done by Paolo Cavallini, one of the project steering committee members. He checks for the formalities mostly, so that there is documentation, that there is a bug tracker for people to report any issues, and that there is no suspicious code, so that it's more or less safe to install it, although we, of course, cannot give an absolute guarantee. So that's what Paolo does. On the other hand, if you would like to contribute something to the translations or to the documentation, there's a dedicated team who are handling this, who are splitting the work so that we don't duplicate anything unnecessarily. And you would get in contact with them on the community mailing list. They are organizing there and splitting the work. Right, so those so-called core committers are the development team who have the most rights and who get to change the QGIS code. And it's a process which works very well for us. You usually get nominated because people notice that you produce good code and you uphold the values of the project. So you get nominated and the project steering committee will decide on your nomination and they will say yes or no. And afterwards you get the commit rights on GitHub and you can start doing even more work for the project. I hope we see our growth continue, both in the number of contributors and in users. I think in certain aspects we have to find ways to move maybe a bit away from this very volunteer-driven approach that we've been doing successfully for a number of years. Because the expectations are higher now, because more people use it in increasingly professional settings. So we are trying to raise more funds to have more sustainable workflows in the areas of testing, the application, automatic testing, bug tracking. Also, our whole infrastructure has to be managed. Of course, you have to check on the servers, you have to provide all the downloads. We have lots of ideas how to improve the plug-in website, for example, to make it easier to find which tools you would like to use and also to find documentation on those. And of course, the whole documentation issue, you could always improve something there. So there's lots of things that we are planning for the future. I just saw a commit which I'm very excited about, which will allow us to put, it's about the labeling in QGIS, to put a label priority on every single feature. So moving away from the previous approach where you could put priorities per layer, you can now, if I interpreted the code correctly, put a priority on a per feature basis. So you could have a whole feature of towns in a whole layer of towns, and for each town say how important it is to show the label for that town. And I'm really looking forward to trying that out maybe on the weekend.